Hey guys, do you like Dance of Knives Rogue but you hate snapshotting? Then you should definitely check out this video here. So I think I might have found the best setup so far for a no snapshotting Dance of Knives variant. And this one here is utilizing the new rework key passive from Rogue, which is Victimize. So maybe you also have watched my previous video. There I was playing also another variant of Dance of Knives, which I called the Alchemist Dancer, because I was playing with the Icy Alchemist aspect, which was causing this cold damage explosions. And in this video I already mentioned that Victimize is actually superior to this variant, but it also has some higher item requirements. So you will just need a bit more powerful gear in order to make it work. But in the high-end game, this variant is superior. So I finally updated and swapped to the Victimize variant. And as you can see, I can now speed farm pit tier 80s. So this for me is right now the sweet spot of the build. I'm pretty sure you can increase it a bit further, so with better gear than I do. So for example, my amulet is still not very good, I don't have any ranks to frigid finesse. So I believe the sweet spot of this build is somewhere in between pit 80 and 85. And yeah, this is what you basically can expect in the end game. And the big major advantage of this build, like I highlighted or mentioned in the beginning of the video, is that it doesn't rely on any snapshotting mechanics. So the grenade tag build, which is actually based on the bug with the grenade archetype of Dance of Knives. So I also call it the Meepy build. So the Meepy build is more powerful than this one in terms of pure damage. So you can pit push way higher than here, but it's more clunky. And I think many players don't enjoy the Meepy variant just because of the clunkiness and all the snapshots you have to do. So for example, you're very vulnerable to crowd control effects. If something stuns you or freezes you and stuff like that, then you will have to repeat your entire skill rotation again to enable all the snapshots you have lost and just to go back to the damage. And also it has some other weird mechanics. So for example, it also snapshots Fist of Fate, so you can deal very little damage with it as well. Here, by the way, I want to show you the council member fight, because the boss damage was actually the weakness of my previous Alchemist Dancer version. But you can see here the boss damage is kinda nice, so we just killed these council members here in a couple of seconds. And as you also can see here, I have nearly 800 ether in an 8-wave run. So this build is very good for speed farming Infernal Hordes, if that's what you want to do. And yeah, I think it's still a very, very powerful speed farmer. I can also show you my previous version. This is the Alchemist Dancer without Victimize. But here I also made some upgrades, and I could also go up a little bit in my pit speed farming routine. So with this variant I was able to speed farm 75s. So the difference between Victimize and my latest Alchemist Dancer is actually not that huge. So I expected it to be way more broken at this point, but actually it's pretty close. So if you keep in mind that in this variant here, the Alchemist Dancer from my previous video, you have way lower gear requirements. You will see that my gear with the Victimized variant is kinda good already, and it's not too easy to get all of this stuff early in the game. So especially in the first, in the mid game, in the first Torment tiers, just like I mentioned in my previous video, I think the Alchemist Dancer might really be the most powerful speed farming build and also the most fun one for the Rogue class. So I'm pretty sure I will highlight this build in every Rogue season from now on, and will update it every season. So yeah, pit 75 pit speedrun is actually kinda good if you keep in mind that you have very low item requirements and also no annoying snapshotting mechanics, and you can just blast through everything. And also, like I mentioned before, you are not having problems with crowd control, so if an enemy crowd controls you, stuns you or something, it's no problem, just use Shadow Step and continue blasting again and continue spinning again. You don't have a problem with that, so it's just way less clunky and yeah, way more fun to play in my opinion. So again, for everyone who likes Dance of Knives but don't like snapshotting and clunky playstyle, and want to have more fun with it, I can highly recommend you one of these two variants here. And now we're going to take a look at the superior variant in the endgame, the Victimize Dance of Knives. So let's go back to the game here. Right now I'm here in the training room, and I think now I can show you the skill rotation first. So, or let's maybe talk about the basics. So for everyone who's new to the Rogue class maybe, the Rogue class has this key passive, which is called Victimize. And Victimize is basically a lucky hit chance key passive. So here we have a chance up to 50% each time we deal direct damage to a vulnerable enemy to cause an explosion, which is dealing a bunch of damage. And this is actually a lot of damage. So we will reach damage numbers somewhere between 2 to 5 billion damage. So very huge AoE explosions. And this damage type is also the same to the damage type of the skill that we are using. This is also important because we are playing with Poison Imbuement, when we have some very cool mechanics and interactions we can make with Poison element with the Rogue. So this is also very handy. And the way how we scale this damage in the endgame is by applying more vulnerable damage in our gear, basically. So you want to stack as much vulnerable damage on your character sheet as possible. So right now I have 2600. This can go up to something like 3000 on the Rogue with some very, very, very good gear. But yeah, also this 2600 already is pretty good. And this way we scale the damage. And then we are causing this explosions here, which usually should be green. I'm not sure why the color changes sometimes to orange and yellow, but you can see it's green because we have a poison imbued our Dance of Knives. So it just takes the same element as our skill has here. And the reason why we want Poison Imbuement, there are a couple of reasons, but one of them is we have very good aspects we can combine with this build. So for example, we have Noxious Eyes, which says that we deal 60% more additional poison damage to frozen enemies. So we have to freeze enemies and then we will deal a bunch more poison damage. And don't switch poisoning. So this is not the same, these are different affixes. So Victimize is counted as poison damage every time we use Poison Imbuement with our Dance of Knives. So we just increase our Victimize damage here by 60%. And also we have a very nice passives like Alchemical Advantage. So here we just get up to 20% more lucky chance. And this whole build is based around lucky chance. So the only things you basically want is vulnerable damage and lucky chance on your gear. So I can also show you right now I have 153% additional lucky chance bonus, but I'm also playing with Call of the Nameless. So this also gives me up to 40% increased lucky chance, and this is multiplicative. So my entire lucky chance here will get multiplied by 40%. So this should give me something more than 210% lucky chance, which is just very, very good for this build. So yeah, now I can show you the skill rotation quickly. So as promised, this build doesn't utilize snapshots at all, but we have one exception for that. So one and the only snapshot in this build is your Poison Imbuement. So the way how imbuments work with Dance of Knives is that they always snapshot, so you only need to activate it once. And as long as you keep channeling your skill, you always will have your knives poison imbued. But this is nothing clunky, in my opinion, so you just have to activate it once, and then you can just start spinning. And yeah, this is basically your entire rotation. If you're really lazy, don't want to do more things than that, then this is just enough. And every time we get CC'd or we want to be a bit faster, we can use Shadow Step. And this way we are even faster than the Grenade Tag build, in my opinion. So we even have more mobility with this variant. But yeah, this is the only snapshot, and for me it's not a real snapshot, just how the imbuments work with Dance of Knives. But besides that, what you can do in order to improve your damage further. So here we're also playing with the Umber Crux. And I'm not sure how it's working this season, if there are some buggy interactions or not. But what I realized is every time I use Umber Crux, so with this item we are summoning a Shade Totem. So basically an enemy totem that we can attack, and then this totem also reflects damage that we deal to it and reflects it to all enemies, so it's also a source of AoE. And yeah, like I mentioned, I'm not sure what's going on right now here, if everything is correct or not, but I have realized every time I use it on a group of enemies, my damage just explodes. So I can recommend you to also use this shade totem in your skill rotation. And the way how I like to use it is every time I see that there's an elite pack in front of me, I cast my Dark Shroud at their location. So Dark Shroud casts also this shade totem, because we only need to activate a subterfuge skill, and we have many of those, but Dark Shroud is also subterfuge skill. So what we can do is, if we see there's a lead pack in front of us, we can already, while we keep spinning, we can already cast our Dark Shroud in front of the lead pack. So you see my cursor is at the training dummy, and if I press now my Dark Shroud skill, then I also summon a shade totem here, which you can't see very well, but I can cast it here maybe, and now you can see it better. So this is a very handy technique in order to make sure we do not interrupt our spinning, but we can cast our shade totem from the Umber Crux. So this way I don't interrupt anything and can keep spinning and winning. But of course you can also use your smoke grenade for that purpose. This way you will also deal more damage, since smoke grenade increases your total damage by 25%, but smoke grenade will interrupt your spinning, and this may be a bit more clunky, so I'm not recommending this in the first place, but instead just try to learn using this Dark Shroud. But I fear this also only works with keyboard players and mouse players. On console you can't target directly with your Dark Shroud, so if you're on a console, you cannot do this in advance, but you have to wait until you are more close to the enemies, and then you will cast your Dark Shroud. But yeah, I can recommend you to use your Umber Crux also for elite fights. But that's basically it. You only spin you spin the entire time, use your Poison Imbuement, but that's basically it. For the boss fight, we also use Caltrops and Smoke Grenade. So my typical boss rotation would look like this. I would first lay down my Caltrops, then I throw my Smoke Grenade. So this way we have some additional damage multipliers from both skills. And then I start spinning, and if my Smoke Grenade missed or something, I can also use Dark Shot again to reposition my shade totem. So especially in boss fight, the Umber Crux is very important. So it basically increases your damage by 60% or something. You just have more lucky chance procs this way. So the reason why we use Umber Crux in the boss fight is we want to increase the amount of Victimize explosions, which are lucky chance based. And the Umber Crux summons a shade totem, which we can attack, and it also registers all of our lucky chance procs. So it's very important in the boss fight, and you want to always make sure that it's active during the boss fight, because it will just increase your damage. So yeah, this is my boss rotation. I think it's very easy as well. And now let's take a look at the items. So what are the most important aspects and items here? So since we are playing with Victimize and we want to have a as high lucky chance as possible, one of the key items in this build are Fist of Fate, and here you want a greater FX for lucky chance if possible. And also keep in mind, Fist of Fate got fixed this season for the Rogue, so now I feel like it works for basically every skill and attack. So the 300% unique effect is also working for Victimize. So you also want a Fist of Fate which has nearly max roll for the maximum amount of damage. But as I mentioned, lucky chance is the most important FX on this item. You just want a greater FX if possible in order to get this huge lucky chance bonus. Then we also have Call of the Nameless. This is the best item and actually better than any mythic unique. And here you also want to have as near as possible to the max roll, because you will increase your lucky chance here in a multiplicative way, like I mentioned before, and it's very powerful for this build. And also you want to hit either unstable elixirs or trick attacks with greater FX. Both are very powerful passives and they will increase your damage. So here I have 60% more damage after using healing potions. So I'm sorry if I I forgot this, also in the skill rotation, you also want to use your healing potions every 10 seconds. Yeah, because you just increase your damage also in a very huge way here with unstable elixirs. So also use your healing potion. And also Trick Attacks gives you huge damage bonus, especially in the pit run itself, not in the boss fight, but during the pit run. It will double your damage here, as you can see. So yeah, very good item. These two, I would say, are the most important items. So especially if you are into trading, then you should spend most of your gold on these two items. They will increase your damage in the most significant way. And then also, of course, the Armor Crux, but Armor Crux is not too hard to get. You don't need a perfect one. Also here, I only have 4.5 seconds. It's not the perfect item, but yeah, you will find one very soon, I think, in the Infernal Hordes. And here you want a greater effects on vulnerable damage as possible. But I would say these three items are, sorry, here this one, and this one are your key items. Then of course, if you have a Shroud of False Death, this is also very powerful mythic unique. But this is the rule for all classes basically. So this is one of the best mythic uniques right now that will just increase your overall damage, because it gives you +1 to all passives in your skill tree. So also a very good item here. And what you also will probably need is this Star Shards aspect. So this aspect is kind of buggy, or actually, yeah, at least behaving in a very weird way. So the flat damage is not too high on this aspect here, but for some reason this aspect increases your damage in a very, very significant way. So you can't play any Dance of Knife build right now without this aspect here. So this is also mandatory, and I would say you need to find this before you can play Dance of Knives at all. But yeah, these are your key requirements. And all of the rest of the items, so I can quickly hover all of my gear here. And the rest of the items are just here to give you as much vulnerable damage as possible, and also as much lucky chance as possible. So on my crossbow here, for example, you want a crossbow, by the way, because they also have vulnerable damage as a flat affix. Yeah, so always take a crossbow. And here you can see, for example, I have a bunch of vulnerable damage. And also on my dagger, I have vulnerable damage, on my rings. And on my amulet, I lack vulnerable damage. I still need a better amulet. But yeah, vulnerable damage is key. And also, so this is your number one offensive aspect on your offensive gear. And the second one on your weapons is poison damage. So poison damage, it just works the same as I have explained it in the beginning of the video. So because we're playing with Poison Imbuement, everything, like every damage source we have is poison. This way we benefit from aspects like Noxious Eyes here on my amulet. But also we are playing with Eldritch Bounty in the Paragon board. And this one also increases our damage by 20% if we have used an imbuement. So the poison imbuement increases poison damage by 20%. So this way it will also increase this flat damage of the weapons here. And I can also quickly show you, so if I turn off Victimize, so I have removed the Victimize key passive, then you will see that I'm still dealing some bunch of million damage here. And this is all coming from my weapon tempers, as I just showed you. So right now it doesn't want to show you, but sometimes you will see this high million numbers. So here you saw 200 million, and this can also stack a bit, especially with some more enemies around you, because it also scales with star shards for some weird reasons. But so especially in the boss fight, this is also kind of important to have this poison damage flat tempers here. So also try to get one with a decent roll. And here even masterworked it twice, which is not too bad. So yeah, also important temper. But besides that, nothing too crazy. Just get a bunch of vulnerable damage and lucky chance. Here's also an important one, lucky chance to make enemies vulnerable. So we can now dip into the FAQ of this video. So how do we make enemies vulnerable? The most easy way is to get it on the ring. So this is just an FX. You can roll on the ring, for example, and you can see here 75% chance is pretty high. So this will basically instant make all of the enemies vulnerable. And yeah, this is how we solve this problem, because we need to make enemies vulnerable in order to trigger the Victimize. And also, one question many people ask me a lot of the time is, why do we have diamonds in our weapons? So this has to do with the no witness key passive. So here you can read no witness gives us a damage bonus, and it scales off ultimate skill damage. So if we have some amount of ultimate skill damage, this will scale this legendary node. For that reason, we also have Devious in this board here, because we get a bunch of ultimate damage as well. And the goal here is to reach this 45% maximum bonus. And for that reason, we just put some diamonds in our weapons. And for that reason, we also play with this Bag Yom rune combination. So every 50 meters we travel, we invoke the Druid's Petrify. This is an ultimate skill from the Druid class. And the only reason why we want this is because this will also trigger our no witness legendary board. And this And this way we will deal more damage. And here I have the same combination as my previous version. So we have Neo Q. This gives me the Earth and Bulwark from Druid. And this way I can play with the conceded aspect, so I deal more damage while I have a barrier. But yeah, I think I've covered the most important stuff here. We're also playing with preparation. This will just reduce all of our cooldowns, which is kind of handy and give us some more damage reduction. But yeah, that's basically it. I think now I can quickly go over the skills and finish this video here. So compared to the other version, the Alchemist Dancer, the only change basically here is that instead of Cold Imbuement and Shadow Imbuement, we are playing with Poison Imbuement. And here we can take some advantage of this alchemical advantage and debilitating toxins for some further damage reduction. But I think that's the only change besides the key passive, which was momentum in the Alchemist Dancer and now is Victimize. And yeah, but everything else is just the same as in my previous build. And also the Paragon, nothing has really changed, so you can actually keep all the boards if you also want to swap, like transition from the previous build to this one. Then the boards are the same, I only have some different glyphs here. So on the starting board we now have Diminish glyph, because this also double dips with Victimize. The legendary effect increases our vulnerable damage. And this one double dips, so it also increases the damage of Victimize explosions. So for that reason we want Diminish. We still have Control in the second board here, we still have Devious in the third board. And in the Exploit Weakness board we now have Fluidity, because this one scales our vulnerable damage nodes here, which we need for Victimize. And the last board, instead of Handhunter, here you want to play with Exploit. With some more Paragon points, you can also reach some further strength nodes here. But here you also get a bunch of vulnerable damage, and this one also double dips with Victimize. And just for your interest, also Malice ranks double dip with Victimize. So for that reason, if you have something like +6 or +7 Malice ranks on your amulet, this will also increase your damage by quite a big amount, especially during the boss fight. So everything that increases your vulnerable damage basically double dips with Victimize. So this is why we have this huge vulnerable damage numbers in our character sheet. So just for your information. But yeah, this is basically the build. I hope you enjoyed it. So again, I think this is the most fun Dance of Knives build for everyone who hates snapshotting and hates doing these clunky rotations. So I hope you enjoyed it. You can, as always, leave me a like, write down a comment, and subscribe to this channel to support my channel here. I would really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope I see you next one. Have a nice day, guys, and bye-bye.